Oil, the lifeblood of modern civilization. But behind this black gold lies a story of power, economics, and geopolitics. This is the story of the petrodollar. For decades, the petrodollar has been the backbone of global financial systems, ensuring America's economic dominance and shaping international relations. Introduced in the 1970s, the petrodollar system tied the value of oil to the US dollar, creating a financial ecosystem where oil-rich nations invested heavily in US assets, and the other dollar became the world's primarily reserved currency. However, as the world shifts towards renewable energy and new economic alliances emerge, the petrodollar's once unshakable influence is being challenged. The rise of alternative currencies, changing geopolitical dynamics, and the global push for green energy are rewriting the rules of the game. What was once a symbol of American strength is now at a crossroads, with potential consequences for global trade, economic stability, and international power structures. Further in today's video, we'll look into the fascinating history of the petrodollar, exploring how it came to be, how it transformed America, and what might happen if Saudi Arabia and OPEC countries decide to sell their oil in a different currency. Before moving ahead, make sure you've subscribed to our channel for more informative documentaries. America before petrodollar. Post-World War II, America emerged as the world's dominant superpower, but this newfound status came with significant economic challenges. At the heart of post-war economic order was the Bretton Woods system, established in 1944. This system fixed the value of major world currencies to the US dollar, which, in turn, was convertible to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. This arrangement brought a period of stability and economic growth, allowing for predictable exchange rates that facilitated international trade and investment. However, the Bretton Woods system also placed immense pressure on the US economy. As the global economy grew, the demand for dollars increased. The US had to maintain large gold reserves to back growing volumes of dollars circulating around the world. This created the persistent trade deficit, as America had to send dollars overseas to pay for imports while maintaining enough gold to send back those dollars. By the late 1960s, the situation became unsustainable. Foreign nations, particularly France, began to lose confidence in the dollar's value and demanded gold in exchange for their dollar holdings. In 1971, President Richard Nixon made a massive decision that reshaped the global financial landscape. On August 15th, he announced that the United States would no longer exchange dollars for gold. This effectively ended the Bretton Woods system and led the dollar floating freely on the international currency markets. This Nixon shock was intended to combat inflation, reduce the trade deficit, and stabilize the American economy, but it also created significant uncertainty. Without the gold standard, currencies were subject to market forces, leading to more volatility in exchange rates. The global economy was still adjusting to these changes when, in 1973, the Arab-Israeli War broke out. In response to Western support for Israel, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, imposed an oil embargo on the United States and other nations supporting Israel. The embargo led to a quadrupling of oil prices almost overnight. This sudden increase in oil prices sent shockwaves through the global economy, causing inflation and economic stagnation, a period often referred to as stagflation. What is petrodollar, and how was it a mastermind move by America? Before jumping into other aspects of the video, we first have to understand what is petrodollar and why it is so vital for American economy. The petrodollar refers to US dollars used by countries to purchase oil. This system emerged in the early 1970s when the United States, facing economic instability, struck a strategic deal with Saudi Arabia. The agreement was simple but brilliant. Saudi Arabia and other OPEC countries would sell oil exclusively in US dollars. In return, the US would provide military protection and arms to these nations. By binding the scale of oil to the dollar, the US created a continuous and global demand for its currency. Countries around the world needed dollars to buy oil, the lifeblood of their economies. This demand ensured that the dollar remained the dominant global reserve currency, giving the US an unparalleled economic advantage. The petrodollar system allowed the US to run larger budget deficits without fear of currency devaluation. The influx of dollars from oil transactions and subsequent investments by oil-rich nations into US Treasury bonds provided a steady stream of capital. In essence, the petrodollar was a masterstroke of economic strategy, cementing the dollar's global dominance and securing America's economic and geopolitical influence for decades. The arrival of petrodollar. So now, moving back to our actual context about the arrival and rise of the petrodollar. In 1974, during the oil embargo, the United States struck a crucial deal with Saudi Arabia, arranged by then Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. This agreement would fundamentally reshape the global financial landscape. The petrodollar system created a continuous global demand for US dollars. Since oil was the lifeblood of economies worldwide, countries needed dollars to purchase it. This requirement effectively made the dollar the central pillar of international trade, as countries around the world stockpiled dollars to pay for their energy needs. The dollar's position as the global reserve currency was cemented. This arrangement provided the US with a unique economic advantage. It could print more dollars without the immediate threat of devaluation because the global demand for the currency was so strong. The influx of dollars from oil revenues allowed the US to run larger budget deficits and fund extensive military and welfare programs. This financial flexibility enabled America to invest heavily in its infrastructure, military, and technological innovations, fueling decades of economic growth. The petrodollar system also meant that oil-producing countries, awash in dollar reserves, had a vested interest in maintaining the strength of the dollar, further stabilizing the global economic system. The economic benefits of the petrodollar were brightly apparent during the 1980s and 1990s. These decades were characterized by unprecedented growth in the US economy, often referred to as the Golden Age. Several factors contributed to this boom. Easy access to credit encouraged consumer spending and investment, driving economic activity. Additionally, the technological revolution, marked by the rise of personal computers, the internet, and telecommunications, spurred productivity and created new industries. Consumer spending, buoyed by confidence in the economy and the availability of credit, reached new heights. Americans bought homes, cars, and consumer electronics at unprecedented rates, fueling demand across various sectors. This consumer-driven growth created jobs, increased incomes, and generated tax revenues, further stimulating economic activity. The US government also leveraged the benefits of the petrodollar to enhance its global influence. Military spending soared, supporting the development of advanced technologies and maintaining a robust defense posture. Welfare programs expanded, providing a safety net for millions and ensuring social stability. The petrodollar system impact extended beyond the US borders. Oil-rich nations like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates invested their dollar revenues in US assets, including government bonds, real estate, and businesses. These investments created a cycle of mutual dependency. The US benefited from capital inflows that financed its deficits, while oil exporting countries enjoyed the security of investing in a stable and lucrative market. However, the petrodollar system was not without its complexities and long-term implications. By tying the global economy to the dollar, it made many countries vulnerable to US monetary policy and economic fluctuations. Additionally, America's heavy reliance on oil revenues linked its economic health to the stability of the Middle East, a region often plagued by political instability and conflict. Moreover, the reliance of the petrodollar also had long-term implications. It tied the US economy to global oil markets, making it vulnerable to fluctuations in oil prices and geopolitical events in the Middle East. Additionally, it fostered an economic environment where other nations were heavily dependent on the dollar, sometimes at the expense of their own economic stability. What would happen if oil trades shift to an alternative currency? But what if the Saudi Arabia and other OPEC countries decided to sell oil in different currency? The implications would be massive, shaking the very foundations of the global financial system. Firstly, the demand for US dollars would plummet. Currently, countries around the world need dollars to buy oil, but if they could use another currency, that need would disappear. This would lead to a sharp devaluation of the dollar. The immediate effect would be inflation in the US. As the dollar loses value, the cost of imports would rise. Everything from electronics to clothes to cars would become more expensive. Everyday goods that Americans take for granted would see the price hikes, squeezing household budgets. Countries holding large reserves of dollars might start dumping them to avoid losses, flooding the market with dollars. This would further drive down the value of the currency, creating a vicious cycle of devaluation and inflation. The economic instability could be profound, shaking investor confidence and causing financial markets to plunge. Global financial markets would face unprecedented turmoil. Investors, always seeking safe havens during periods of uncertainty, would likely rush into more stable assets. This could boost the value of other major currencies like the euro or yuan. Gold, often seen as a safe store of value, would likely see a spike in demand. Commodities such as silver and even cryptocurrencies might experience increased interest as investors diversify to protect their wealth. For everyday Americans, the consequences could be severe. Higher inflation would erode purchasing power, meaning that salaries and savings would not go as far as they used to. This decrease in living standards could lead to widespread economic hardship. The US government might have to implement austerity measures to stabilize the economy. These measures could include cutting public services and social programs, which would particularly impact vulnerable populations reliant on government support for healthcare, education, and welfare. Globally, the shift could redefine geopolitical alliances. The US has long used its economic power, backed by the petrodollar system, to exert influence around the world. If the petrodollar collapses, countries might realign economically and politically, seeking new partners. This could reduce US influence on the world stage, diminishing its ability to shape global policies and negotiations. New economic blocs would emerge as countries band together to create alternative financial systems and trading networks. The balance of power might shift towards the east, with China and other rising economies gaining greater influence. This shift could lead to a new era of global politics, where US dominance is challenged by multipolar world order. For example, China has been actively working on initiatives like the Belt and the Road Initiative, BRI, which seeks to create vast trade networks connecting Asia with Europe and Africa. By fostering closer economic ties through infrastructure investments and trade agreements, China could strengthen its position as a global economic leader. Similarly, Russia, with its significant energy resources, might find new opportunities to exert influence in a world less dependent on the US dollar. In this new landscape, countries like Asia, Africa, and Latin America might find new opportunities for growth and development as they align with these emerging powers. This realignment could bring about new alliances and economic partnerships, further diversifying global trade and investment flows. As we move further into the 21st century, the foundations of the petrodollar system are being questioned. The rise of renewable energy sources, shifts in geopolitical alliances, and the increasing use of the alternative currencies in global trade challenge the dominance of the petrodollar. These changes would potentially reshape the global economic order and America's role within it. For almost 50 years, the petrodollar has been the bedrock of America's economic supremacy, and if it were to disappear, the repercussions would be felt worldwide, transforming economies and power dynamics across the globe. What are your thoughts? Are we on the brink of a post-petrodollar era? Share your opinions in the comments below. If you liked the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed, subscribe now to stay updated with our informative content.